Force to face it, I'm winning. Reward the patience given. To hood politics with pride. Oh, man. I'm in a good mood. I'm glad to start the show here. Got a great show for you today. I don't know why I'm starting like that, but glad to talk to you. So, let me tell you about today and how things gonna be as goings on. It's like what the licks reads. You feel me? Like this what we picking up, throwing down, tell you about the blase blah, whoop-de-whoop. I'm gonna catch you on the 53rd. I don't know why I just became my Uncle Ed just now. Rest in peace. But essentially, here's the thing, dude. What we tried to do this year, if you ain't figured out, was to stay more current with our episodes. What I did most of last year, that was like kind of my plan to kind of be more professional about my podcasting, was like, I want to be like at least 4 episodes ahead every month, so that like if I don't know, I gotta go on tour or something like that happens, where like I'll be good. Like I could like skip recording because there's enough in the tank. What kept happening last year was like life just kept moving so fast. Like the news kept moving so fast that it was like by the time I'm ready to talk about it, it's like old news, you know. And I appreciated y'all like riding with me, but ultimately it was like, man, you kind of gotta stay on point, bro. Like you gotta stay where we are in the episodes that were. I'm plugging my headphones in because I realize I can't hear myself. But the episodes where we were okay, see now I can hear myself. The episodes where we were like right on top of like what was happening ended up being, you know, the more higher downloaded. You may or may not know by now, I have yet to reach the numbers of the other Cool Zone series to where I'll be able to like actually make some residuals off this show. So what we trying to do is get them numbers up. So please like, subscribe, and share. Try to make some bread out this mug. I feel like I'm doing the Lord's work. But anyway, I did not get sent no 100,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel. I ain't salty, you feel me? And I'm not salty. Like, congratulations to the Kendrick Lamar of the Cool Zone media team. Oh man, that joke has levels, especially because we're going to talk about Kendrick in a little bit. But yeah, so I've been trying to like make sure that these episodes are much more current and visually stimulating and all that good stuff. But there's such a panoply, a good word right there, of a plethora of things we could cover every week. So much happened. Trade wars, tariffs, USAID, the Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Consumer Affairs, like the people that make sure that a car company can't sell you a car that don't work. You know what I'm saying? Like they go like so much to cover. But in that made me have to scrap the first episode I made that was supposed to be for the beginning of this year about the cars driving into the French Quarters, about the Tesla catching on fire, which clearly was a metaphor and foreshadowing. I didn't get to talk about South Korea impeaching their president or prime minister, about that fool trying to call martial law. Like there's so much I didn't get to talk about because life just happened so fast. You feel me? I even did a whole episode about Nikki Giovanni, but like that'll probably never see the light of day because like 1, I didn't have my camera set up then, and 2, just so much has happened. But a dope thing fell in my lap today, and it's about the RFK of it all. So we got to talk about the likelihood of an entire generation having measles and rickets again. Hood politics, y'all! Okay. You may or may not know our play cousin pod, the House of Pod, Dr. Kaveh Hoda, who's I've been on his show many times. A lot of us on our team have been on his show, and he's also been on the Bastards pod many times. We love Kaveh, man. I feel like for me specifically, his show is really much like the medical science version of mine, to where it's like he's taking things that are truly complicated, it's it's medical science. You know what I mean? And explaining it in a way that us who don't have, degrees in that stuff could like really understand. And I feel like it's so important because it's like, sometimes I feel like I have to jump a hurdle to convince people that like, yo, you should care about politics. Like it really affects you, and I have to try to like walk people through as to why this affects you and why it's important for you to know what you're talking about. Okave is like, I mean, I don't have to convince you that you should understand medicine in the medical field. Like you should understand the medical field because it obviously affects you. I know my premise is these people aren't smarter than you in the political spectrum. They just use a different language. I can't say that about them doctors. They are actually smarter than us. But he has a way of bringing it to us. So I was on an incredible show with an incredible human being who is freakishly smart, and I am not gonna double introduce it because it's going to get introduced when you guys listen to this episode. And I'll put some sort of visual on that you could watch if you on YouTube while you're listening to this episode. It'll probably be some sort of performance video of me doing a show at some point. So you can just watch me perform music and poetry while the sound is not synced up and just listen to these really smart people talk. Now, but before we get into that, but look, it's like this. But look, it's like this. But look, it's like this. It's been quite a week, y'all. Like, I mean, it's not like y'all don't know it's been quite a week. Tariffs, boy. Trump ignited no sweet little tariffs. Like if you from DC and Maryland, Trump talk about tariffs. Tariffs. Here a tariff, there a tariff, you get a tariff. Now, you may or may not know what a tariff is. It's a tax. It's an international tax. Basically, if you want to sell here, you got to pay me more to be able to sell here. If you're going to sell your stuff here, I'm going to charge you for access, basically. And we have what's called a trade deficit. What does that mean? Well, it means the opposite about China, which I'm going to have to do a whole show about this, but China got a trade surplus. This is all about tariffs, trust me. And what that means is that China sells more than they buy. The products they export, they're making so much more than they're spending because everybody buy China stuff. And Trump don't like that because we have the opposite. It's called a trade deficit, meaning we buying more from everybody else than we're selling. And Trump's response is it's two parts. It's like, we need to get our weight up, but the only way to get our weight up is to try to like make it harder for them to sell. And what he gonna do is raise the prices on having access to all these buyers. Right? Because clearly America likes buying. Now, he was using that as leverage to the North American countries like Canada and Japan, like Canada and Mexico. His reasoning is, well, y'all got to shore up them borders. You got to stop all this fentanyl from coming. Canada like, sir, we represent less than 1% of your fentanyl problem. Mexico like, sir, fentanyl is coming from legal citizens going through legal ports. They're not coyotes. Why would someone trying to flee a war-torn country looking for asylum bring a drug in? It doesn't make any sense. But whatever. What do you want? And Trump's like, whoever did this last trade was a dum-dum. Who set up this deal last time? This deal's awful. He set up the deal in 2018. It's his trade deal. I love it, dude. My man turned in his homework from his junior year as if it was a new essay. I love it. Mexico, like, This is what you said. This is what you wanted last time. Well, how about I agree to this? And basically, they agreed to what they already agreed to. They said, if not, I'm going to send 10,000 troops to the border. Mexico, like, there's already 10,000 troops. You've already sent them. I don't know. What are you talking about? Anyway, so depending on what channel you watch, it worked because, you know, Canada and Mexico, big old air quotes, back down. I don't know. We'll see. Our groceries are more expensive. And because according to him, you know, it's hard to bring down grocery prices. Oh, man. I don't know. It's just so funny to me. And now, you know, the MAGA folks is like, that's right. You should pay more. It's patriotism. These are patriotism. These are patriot eggs. You know what I'm saying? Like, you post up, these are patriot prices. You're willing to pay higher prices for your groceries because you love our country. It's like putting your finger on Jello, man. Anyway, yeah, the Consumer Protection Agency shut down. Yeah, them the people that make sure the consumers are protected. Yeah, they gone. According to the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. Man, the man got your social security number. I'm telling you that right now. Yeah, and the guy that's been put in place to run it for now is a guy named Russell Boyd, who you might know from previous hits such as Project 2025. You know that thing that Trump said he had nothing to do with, that he has his own plan? Yeah, the guy that wrote that is now in charge of the consumer. It's absolutely amazing. We got 2 additions to the State of the Blackness address that'll happen in June. One of which is Ye is officially in the go ahead, bruh, season. Look, you got it, Chief. It ain't even no point in us hashing out his tweets, the Nazi. You got it, Chief. It's all you. And like I've taught y'all before, this is black speech for you're so dumb and it's not worth our time explaining to you or trying to save you from whatever damage you're doing. Like, Kanye West is the Kanye West of hating Kanye West. He's the best at destroying himself. But you know what? You're a genius. You got it, bro. Trump kind of subtly, not so subtly, absolutely suggested colonial takeover of Gaza. Man. Does Netanyahu understand that this man is not your friend? Then he don't understand. Yeah, he ain't got to talk about that. Costco keeping it real. Them fools said not only is we not ending our DEI, we raising our wages, $30 an hour. Listen, go get you a job. Okay? You can eat your $1.50 slices of pizza for lunch. You can have 25 pounds of mayonnaise at a discount, which you won't need because you make $30 an hour. Go on, get it, Costco. I don't know about I know nothing more than that about them. And the fact that my wife goes there, tries to go at least once a month. It's a lot of food, but we're a family of 4. With the sports ball that happened during Kendrick Lamar's concert, and the Eagles put a whooping. This is just a bad day for light skins, you know, because yeah, this is a bad day for the light-skinned folk. And I tell you what, the Eagles whooped them boys the way the Democrats got whooped in the election. Ran the score up on them. And speaking of run the score up on them, Cornrow Kenji, K. Lama, PG Lang, you know what I'm saying? Pulitzer Kenny. That was high art. I saw my favorite post from this was like, Kendrick Lamar's performance was for people who understand tariffs. It's high art. The symbolism, it's just beautiful. Samuel L. Jackson being Uncle Sam and also a stand-in for America being a minstrel show, knowing how to play the game being over, just so many levels. The revolution will be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy. Like this, it's just so. I don't know what your faith is. I don't know how you understand higher powers, but listen, the way my blackness is set up, there's a piece of us that just kind of says, you know what? Some people are just God's chosen person, right man for the right time, chosen, as the Bible would say, for such a time as this. I look at Kenny. I look at Kendrick, and I'm like, you're just God's choice. You are the right person for this moment. There's no, like, no one, there was no, these ruby red slippers don't fit nobody but your foot. And as an artist from California that wants to see political change, I'm like, I'm not the right guy for this. Kendrick was the right guy for this. And it's like, and it's performances like that that remind you of it. Right man, right time. Boy, did he deliver. There's going to be think pieces forever about all the symbolism, but know that I know y'all saw the PlayStation remote as like the floor buttons. The middle of it was a prison yard. And then him saying, you know, I want to play y'all favorite, but you know, these people like to sue. And then turns and looks at him directly. Say Drake. Oh, man. You can't. Serena crip walking, the guy sneaking out the Gaza flag. Just everything was beautiful. And even more beautiful was the response from the conservatives. Worst halftime show ever. Lauren Boebert talking about, am I the only one that needs subtitles? And you just couldn't think of nothing to tweet except for, I don't understand him. You know these songs, so stop playing around. Madison Cawthorn talking about halftime show should have been Donald Trump just singing the YMCA. Boy, I want to believe he's kidding. Charlie Kirk talking about this is not my style of music. And the Daily Mail, Kendrick Lamar getting slammed for the worst halftime performance ever. Joe Budden's even talking about why you choose these songs. It was a W. Care what you say. Y'all ready to get into this episode? So allow me to introduce you to our friends. Please go support their pod too, the House of Pod. So listen to this science stuff while you watch me do a rap performance. But look, it's like this.
And welcome back to the House of Pod. My name, I'm told, is Dr. Kaveh Hoda. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Thank you for joining our fun little humor-adjacent medical podcast or medical-adjacent podcast. I'm not even sure anymore. We're going to look at public health. We're going to look at medicine. We're going to look where it meets the news and pop culture. Today, it meets the news hard. It slams right into the news, and it's a nasty fender bender, and everyone's gawking at it on the side of the road because there's blood and guts, and it's terrible, and it's people are slowing down traffic for it. It's been about 2 weeks since President Trump's second term has begun, and there's been what seems like a large-scale attack on the public health infrastructure here in the United States. It's been focused mainly with online information that doctors, scientists, healthcare professionals use to take care of our patients and our communities, but it also feels like more than that. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what's been happening, get the latest updates, talk about what that means, and maybe if there's any good news to mine out of what's happening these days as well. To do that, I have two good friends, and I'm excited to have them both on because they're both friends from different parts of my life, and I like them meeting and introducing. I like doing this. This is exciting for me. I hope they get along. I'm really worried that they're not, and they're going to fight, and which would be great air, would be great audio. It'd be a great podcast, but it would be weird for me because I love them both. Let's start with the guest with the most appearances. We have Jason Emmanuel Petty, known as Propaganda, aka Prop. He is an MC, a teacher, a host of the very popular Hood Politics, which is one of my favorite podcasts, an all-around swell fella. Prop, welcome back to the show.
Man, thank you. And I'm really mad that I didn't think of saying the House of Pod is in effect, y'all, and everybody steps up is getting wrecked. I can't believe I never thought about that.
We can work
the
that in
opening
somehow.
to the House of Pain's classic album starts with the House of Pod is in effect, y'all. I'm like, why have I never thought of it? I don't know why I've never said House of Pain puns every time I saw you.
I don't know, because looking at me, I feel like I would be a shoo-in for one of the House of
You
Pain
could have
guys.
joined. You could have jumped around with him. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I do jump around. I
I
have been
know.
known to jump around.
Jump up, and get down. You feel me?
Less,
Like,
less so these days. Less so. Less jumping these
way my
days. More,
knees is set up.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. More like rocking back and forth rhythmically.
Yeah.
You are very attuned to politics and you follow things
Yeah.
very carefully. And your show, as I mentioned, covers a lot of these issues. I love having you on to discuss this stuff. I also brought on someone else that can help us dive in to the public health aspect and what's happening. Someone who's been following this very closely. My friend, Dr. Jeremy Faust. He's an ER doctor. He does a lot of health policy work. He's got a very good Substack called Inside Medicine. Jeremy, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Good to be here.
Is it good to be here? How do you feel?
I feel terrible, but it's better to be in misery loves company.
Yeah, right? It's less terrible when you're with me, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your whole social media avatar is always you high in the air, jumping up. Literally, you're like doing the jump.
Yeah, no.
It really does follow that you should be jump up and jump up and get down.
Yeah.
I had decent ups when we played basketball. I had decent. I mean,
I forgot you was a hooper. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a below the rim guy, let's be fair. But if I had to get up, I could. I just it became so much harder. All right.
Yeah, the right breakaway. Yeah.
We'll get back to that later. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening. Jeremy, let's start with sort of an overview of the organizations before we go into what the Trump administration is doing to these important health policy organizations. Maybe we could get like a one-liner on what these organizations do, or at least historically have done. Like, for example, the NIH. Everyone's talking about the NIH these days. For our listeners who may not be totally familiar with that, what is the NIH? What do they do?
So the NIH is the United States federal government's it's the National Institutes of Health. So it is a bunch of institutes within a bigger organization, and they study science. They study medicine. They do research internally. So we have scientists, professionals who work there to advance knowledge for us all. And for example, it was a scientist at the NIH who took the sequence of the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus that was published online in January of 2020, and she put that into a experiment essentially to create the first vaccine that was going to be tested. So someone had to take that information and get that vaccine up and running so Moderna and Pfizer could do that. It was an NIH scientist who was entrusted with that work. We owe her, Kizzy Corbett, a debt of gratitude. So they do everything from science that benefits us and saves lives today to research on chronic diseases, cancer, HIV. That's internal. And then the NIH also is a grant-giving body. So scientists in academics, Stanford University, UCSF, Harvard, where I'm at, any place, anywhere, apply for grants and they say, hey, we want to study XYZ and here's how we're going to do it. And the NIH is essentially where decisions on those grants are made and how federal funds are distributed. So there are NIH-funded researchers at literally hundreds, if not thousands, of institutions around the country. So the NIH does its own research and it funds external research, extraordinarily powerful.
Would it be safe to say that it's where a lot of the new good ideas revolving around science come out of? Like when we're looking for new cures, when we're looking for something serious, when a family member says, isn't there anything that can be done? Is it safe to say that's really where the NIH comes in?
Yeah, absolutely, because the NIH funds projects that might seem a little far afield. Like, oh, why are we putting money into that? And the answer is you just never know what's going to materialize in an unexpected way. For example, again, I'll use the COVID experience. There were NIH-funded studies back to the 90s and 2000s that someone figured out, oh, this little mRNA strand, that's a strand of genetic material that our bodies use to make anything, your eyebrows, your fingernails, whatever it is. The mRNA is like the little messenger that tells our body how to make stuff. But that little molecule is really fragile. And so some project, I think it was NIH funded, was, oh, you know what? We figured out a way to stabilize that molecule to make it less fragile. We don't know really how that's going to help in the future, but isn't that cool? We can actually take a thing and make it less fragile and make it more robust. Well, fast forward 20 years, you need that technology to make the vaccines that we used in COVID. So no one knew in the 90s or 2000s when they funded that project where it was going to lead. And a lot of things are dead ends, but that's kind of how it works. And it's sort of a venture capital approach. And Kaveh, to your point, like there are a lot of diseases that affect very few people. So there's not going to be an industry model for that. If 1,000 people have a deadly disease, it's very tragic. But I'm sorry, Pfizer is just not going to care because they need a patient. So, but the NIH government research can say, you know what, we have the resources to look after these forgotten things. So yeah, no, it's hugely important.
I think you nailed something that I feel like if any person is like works in a field to where they've done their 10,000 hours, it's like, I've read the level of nerdery that I know I can't really talk about at cocktail hour. Like nobody's going to get this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when you hit that level in your field, I feel like when you're reading someone else or listening to someone talk about their field that you don't know shit about, you can tell if like, you're like, okay, nah, I'm just, I know that you know what you're talking about.
You know smart when you see smart.
You know smart when you see it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, and one of the things you just brought up right now, which is something that I've tried to say on my podcast, I'm like, when it comes to medicine, especially during the pandemic, it's like, you want me to tell you, you want these scientists to tell you, oh, it's this. And I'm like, any scientist that knows what they're talking about is going to be like, I don't know, I think it's that. You know, we're still looking at this. We guessed in the 90s. We thought it was this. Turns out it was nothing. Like you said, it's like some stuff you research and you're just like, oh yeah, it was nothing. And I'm like, the only reason I know it was nothing is because we spent 20 years on it. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it's almost like to the degree for which you can't give me a yes or no answer, especially in that field, makes me go, this fool knows what he's talking about. This person
knows what he's talking about.
This person knows what they're talking about.
That is so important because a lot of the people on what I would call the anti-science side who put forward things that are not scientific, they love to lead with so much certainty. And then we say, well, here's what we think we know. And we couch it around all this language like you're saying. And we're trying to be humble and we're trying to adhere to that scientific principle, which you just delineated, you just described. But some people will say, oh, they're not even sure it's a theory. It's not a fact. It's just a theory. And
we don't even know.
Like the theory of gravity is a theory. You know, that's I'm pretty sure it's true. So but there is this whole thing about how to communicate uncertainty. And we struggle with it because we don't want to say something, we don't want to downplay how strongly we feel. But we also don't want to be, eating it if something is wrong. And that's, by the way, one of the things I said during the pandemic was the difference between an expert and a non-expert is an expert will change their mind. An expert will say, we just learned something.
Yeah. Yes. Right. No, that's a very good point. I don't totally agree with the gravity thing because as we discussed, my ups defy it. But other than that, I absolutely agree. Whenever there's like a gray zone, it's a vacuum and it's filled by all these bad actors. And no matter how hard we try to educate, it's always more appealing to the mass if someone says, here's the answer, it's this, versus here's what we think so far. Like, that's always more appealing. It fits our brains better. It's that little rush that people want. All right, let's talk about some of the other organizations that are big and in the news. The CDC. What does the CDC do?
Mm-hmm. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is in Atlanta, and it's a massive organization, does a lot of important work, ranging from just pure epidemiology, meaning they keep statistics, like how many people die, what did they die from? That's something that they do. The CDC studies disease. It helps scientists and physicians like me and you know what the latest recommendation is. So they have a vaccine committee that says, okay, what should the scheduling for pediatric vaccinations be? And we know that has saved so many lives this past century. Yeah. So they do that. And they also partner with other organizations, both in the United States. So it could be nonprofits, it could be state, public health officials, but also around the world in detecting and combating outbreaks. So I'll give you an example of that. Right now, there is an outbreak of Ebola virus in Uganda. And I wouldn't recommend getting Ebola. But CDC scientists in general would hear about this, and their experts would be on a plane the next day to go to Uganda and say, how can we help? What do you have? What do you need? How can we augment your resources, your expertise? They're not there to tell them how to do it. They are there to see where our resources can plug holes and be of assistance. And that is the work that we do with the WHO, the World Health Organization, and our own foreign aid. Trump put a pause on that last week. So we do not have those people on the ground helping that outbreak. So that's an example of things that the CDC does. They track down outbreaks. They'll send out literal, they call them disease hunters, is like the nickname. Someone says, oh, there's something happening in, I don't know, rural Washington. These kids are getting sick. Someone goes out there and looks into it and figures out, oh gosh, there was a poisoning, a salmonella. We got to make sure that people know about it. So they do everything from keeping track of big data sets, tracking deaths, COVID hospitalizations, tracking disparities in outcomes, and how to treat diseases, to responding to crisis.
And just remind the world again, for those who may have forgotten, why is it important for us, the United States, to have involvement in infectious disease elsewhere in the world? Why is that important for us?
So even if you could just say, why do I want to help anybody? You could say, why should we be saving lives in, I don't frickin' know, Slovenia,
Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, Papua New Guinea. There you go.
Slovenia, they gave us basketball players who get traded and make a big headline. We're not going to talk about that because Prop's a Lakers fan. I don't want to deal with
Yes,
that.
we are.
Sorry.
Yes, we are.
That's a different podcast.
Listen, don't lose your train of thought. Please don't lose your train of thought,
I don't
Jeremy.
want to talk about it.
I'm an ER
But
doctor.
I have to talk.
I can get interrupted and go right back.
Yes, I listen.
Nice.
Have you ever listen? My way I think about this is like if you've ever been hit on by somebody incredibly out of your league, super hot, and you're like, what am I missing? Why are I feel like I'm decent, like I'm like a good catch, but I'm like, what am I missing something? Why are you talking to me? That's the way I feel about us getting Luka. Because I'm like, what am I? Why?
It's less of a stretch. It's less of a stretch for you. You're a handsome guy. You're charming.
That's what I'm talking. I mean, I understand.
You're an artist, all that.
We're the Lakers. Yeah. I get it. And like you said, I'm a pretty talented brother. You know what I'm saying? But still, you don't get
No, I'm a Warriors guy, so I'm a personality guy. I'm all about personality.
That's how I felt this is how I felt when Kaveh started, DMing me a little bit. I was like, ooh, Kaveh Hoda.
Yeah. Wait, you saying I slipped into your DMs? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm not sure which way it went. It was a bromance. Anyway.
Either way, yeah.
You
didn't lose your train of thought.
Yeah, go on. Sorry. We're getting back to it.
So why do we want to help people? That's the question you wanted to ask. Why would we do that? So you could take the humanitarian side and say, why do we care about people in Papua New Guinea or wherever? But there's actually a geopolitical reason that we help people. One is our own security, and one is soft power. So our own security is if we can go help a novel outbreak get controlled, it won't reach our shores, and we don't have that problem. So that would be lovely. Another one is for HIV, for example, we provide up until recently, although the question is whether it's back online or not. It's very unclear.
Yeah.
But up until recently, since the Bush administration, which always shocks people, George W. Bush started this. We had this program called PEPFAR, which has provided HIV medications to poor nations, and has saved 25 million lives. 25 million lives.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty substantial. It's a government project that worked. Actually, it's amazing. And so. Yes, you could make the argument why do we care? But when people actually have their HIV controlled by medications, there's less likely for resistant bad strains to emerge, again, which can come here and make our lives more miserable. So it could be selfish. You can make the altruistic argument, but there are selfish reasons to save lives overseas. And then the last one is, I would say, that I could think of is this soft power thing. Why does America have a positive reputation, or why did it? And a lot of it has to do with things you don't always think about. It could be literally things like we make the best movies, we have the best music, we have great writers. Culture, right? Culture is a way to express that a society is doing well. But another way to do it is to do the kind of work in public health that we've done. And so people actually say, oh, gosh, the Americans, they really screwed it up on this thing in this war or this foreign policy. But on the other hand, they did save 25 million lives. So maybe we shouldn't be complete jerks to them. So it's actually, there's a lot of reasons why we do this work.
This again, now we're crossing into my world because of the soft power, cultural power, and how to be the man. You know what I'm saying? Like this is how you run a city. You be the guy they go to. No matter how much of a jerk that you are. If I'm the dude you gotta go to, then if I'm
put up with a lot.
You put up with a lot, number one. You put up with a lot because you have to come to me. And then number two, if you're the guy that you gotta go to and you're a good dude, then like when you're in need, you're gonna be the first person they think of, right? When it's my turn, or if there's like if we're lobbying for something like, okay, I could sell, we could give this 10 million gallons of crude oil to this country, or we could give it to them. Then again, they did save 20 million lives, and maybe we should sell it to them first, and maybe at a discounted rate. So yeah, there's that. But I think the best part to me is what you're saying as far as the selfish side of like you act like there's a force field at the 47 parallel that just stops the air from flowing. Like, what is you talking about? Like, it's one planet. Like, why would it not get here? Like, what do you like? There's no. We don't really have a wall, guys. And even if we did, like,
if COVID taught us nothing else, it should be that what's happening in other countries will impact us. There is no way we're going to be able to avoid that. Oh, it's mental. But you know what else is unavoidable and inevitable? It's the commercials. They're coming right into your ears. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about what's happening to these organizations. We'll be right back. And we're back. That break was also brought to you by my favorite hot sauce in the whole widest world. It's called Lucky Dog Hot Sauce. It's super, super, super delicious. And you know what? My guests are going to go home with a 4-pack of my favorite sauces from Lucky Dog because I love them. I love Lucky Dog, and I love the combination of them having Lucky Dog in them. So that's what's going to happen. If you're out there in the world and you want to check out Lucky Dog, please do that, luckydoghotsauce.com. Anyways, okay, we are back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what is happening to these organizations. So the CDC, let's start with that. Jeremy, what is happening online? What do we make of a federal health and disease agency deleting pages of their website and censoring words?
This was my question. I was like, when he said I was like, can somebody tell me why? Like, this are we in a movie? Like, this is a movie. That's what you do in a movie. You tell the scientists to not say the science shit.
Jason, has this ever happened before? I mean, I feel like you study history. Has there ever been a time in our world where they've limited what the scientists can say? They've censored the word. I just want to.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Oh, Jeremy, what's going on?
Yeah.
I read this book a bunch of years ago called How Democracies Die. And they were like, check. And this is just right on that playlist and our checklist. And yeah, what's funny to me, it's not funny. None of it's funny. But what's funny to me is if you look at what they're doing is how sensitive they are. Oh no. Oh gosh, if someone were to say this word, what would your virgin precious eyes do with that information? Really? I can't say gender? Like, come on, grow up. Like, what is wrong with these people? So I get that they have a particular agenda that I don't agree with, but what I think is just worth noting is what a bunch of snowflakes. Like, come on.
Yeah.
If we talk about these issues, is the world going to stop turning? And so what they've done is there's been a couple levels of censorship at the CDC. It's been escalating, and then a little bit of de-escalation, and then escalation again. So at first, Trump said there was a complete gag order on all communications from any federal agency, but including public health agencies. So they couldn't get anything out. So the CDC's usual scientific journal, gone. The CDC's weekly emails about whatever they follow, whether it's COVID or whether it's how many people died of opioids this week, gone. There was that comms freeze. And then on Friday, of just 4 days ago, and I say that because it feels like about 16 years ago, 3 or 4 days ago, they actually wiped their websites of like tons of stuff. And some of it would fall under the I roll my eyes, but I understand what they're doing. They don't think trans is a thing, so they're going to scrub the CDC website of websites that I think are at best, at minimum, they're harmless, and at best, they're helpful. So like how to help people who identify as transgender get their health care or get the medications they may need to prevent HIV, the PrEP that's called, right? So they got rid of all those, and I roll my eyes and just like, have a seizure when they do that, because I think it's just so silly and cruel that they would do that. But it kind of matches what their worldview is, and they think that that's what the election gave them sort of a mandate to do. But they also took down vaccine recommendations. They took down data.cdc.gov, which just has statistics on stuff like heart disease and car accidents and just things that aren't political. And also they could scrape it of this language, and that one political appointee has to approve before it goes back.
There's so many crazy parts about this. And I will get back to how they're planning to do this, but why? I mean, what is even their reasoning for scrapping things like information on maternal morbidity or opioid use? What is their long-term gain from that? Are they just they don't want people to know about it? They don't want people to know about the racial disparities in like maternal health outcomes, that like African-American women are doing worse? What is their reasoning for it?
Well, their stated reasoning is to get rid of woke ideologies, whatever that means. It's a little
what
vague.
the fuck? Yes, that's what I'm still like.
A little vague.
What does that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? But anyway, finish.
No, I mean, it's a really important question for the lawyers to tear apart. Like, what the hell does that mean? So that's their stated reason. But then it's so wide that people don't know how to apply it. So why on earth would they take down... here's one. What kind of contraception women should have after pregnancy? And you think, why is that complicated? Well, actually, it turns out that if you were just pregnant, you just gave birth, and now you're going to get back on contraception, it actually matters that you don't use certain things. Maybe you developed a complication during pregnancy, and now you're on a medication, and the contraception that you used to use could actually really harm you. Okay, that is something that is not easy to memorize. So the CDC has a chart for that. And so why did they get rid of that chart? Because it had the word gender on it.
Oh my God.
Gender. Gender. And again, I'm like, God, y'all, it's not a bad word. I mean, it's just come on.
And it's also in his executive order. You said there's two genders.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't say gender?
It's just
so you
childish.
mean we're genderless? Anyway.
They're trying to make this whole sex gender. They're trying to make this whole sex gender thing. Like sex is what you're born up, what your chromosomes are.
Oh, word. Okay.
And gender is how you present. And that's what they're trying to do. But the crazy thing is that even CDC epidemiologists who I've worked with, I've published papers with them, once in a while, they'll just put like sex or gender interchangeably. They don't actually don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
And so they're like, we don't have to change anything. We just have to we literally have to take this website down until we change the word gender to sex. And there's thousands of pages, and there's no way to do it with AI.
There's no like FQ, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's that kind of thing. Another one is they got really up in arms about pregnant people versus pregnant women. And I'll just say, as someone who was like born a long time ago, pregnant people is one of the terms that like I have to remember to say, because I think of pregnancy as something that happens to women, but then I'm like, but there are these edge cases, and you can tell me like, this person was born this way and they have a uterus, but they're a man in terms of their gender. So I get it. I'm woke, okay? But it's still hard for me to always get the words out the first time, just because that's how I'm from.
I mean, it makes me want to say it more than ever. This makes me want to be. I don't even consider myself like necessarily woke. I don't even know what that means anymore. But like, I don't even consider myself that like progressive. But this makes me want to use pronouns. This makes me want to do that stuff. It's ridiculous. I don't understand how adults are doing this.
Yeah, I first of all am like, I refuse to secede the definition of woke to these people. Like, that's not what
Yeah.
it means.
Right.
My granddaddy said woke.
Yeah.
And what he means is, are you aware for which are you awake to the ways for which you're being subjugated? Are you aware of your politics? You have to stay awake. So stay woke. And I'm like, if anything, I'm like, you just as woke as we are.
Yeah.
Because what you saying is you being subjugated and your way of life is being taken from you and you are staying aware and fighting back. I'm like, you just as woke as I am. So I don't understand what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, I think to your point about just, I've always said that like privilege makes you brittle, man. And I'm like, I just, and then the weird mixture of that and just this whole like masculinity, manosphere stuff. And I'm like, I don't like you said, I don't carry a lot of their views of like what it means to be a masculine man. But there's one thing that I do have is most of the time, I really don't care what that man's doing over there. That's not my concern. You want to say gender? What do I care?
Yeah.
What do I care? If you want to say pregnant people, I don't like, I got shit to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like, why is you so worried about, to me, that sound pretty
and they
gossipy. You know what I'm saying?
And they claim that they're doing this to defend women. And the problem with that is that they don't do things that actually defend women.
Defend women. Yes.
I mean, also, no one's ever gotten mad at me for not saying pregnant people. Like, you know what? I should use the term. I agree. I should use it. I'm going to be much more mindful about using it now because of this.
Yeah.
But no one ever got mad at me in the past.
Ever.
You know, maybe someone would correct you, but like they make it sound like there's this army of quote unquote woke people online, scientists and doctors. Like, no, man, no one's gotten mad at me for that.
I've missed a few thems.
Yes.
A couple times.
Yeah.
And like you said, no one blinks because we've shown we actually care that I care about how you feel. Like, if that's important to you, I'm going to try to do something that's important to you. You understand that that's the way I feel. It's no skin off my, like, that's not a hill I need to die on. What are you talking about? You want me to call you this? I just forgot. Yeah.
And there's also this whole thing about the extremes of this. So the Trump administration argument against all of this stuff or against DEI is that on the liberal progressive side, these things are requirements to get grants or to get hired or whatever. And that's just not true. What is true is that on that side of the spectrum, there's interest in those things so that we have representation, so that we serve the communities that we are trying to serve. And there's interest in that. And I think I'll acknowledge that that's not only true, but it's important that there's interest in that. But they have this fantasy that people get hired or things happen 100% only because they check those boxes, when in fact it's a piece of the pie. On the flip side, they're banning it 100% because of that.
Yeah.
They're actually taking something that is a part of the pie and saying, thou shalt not do that. And they're making it the whole pie.
Right. I think to your point, I get the sinister part about that is like the not so subtext is you are either qualified or diverse, right? As if to say that if I am of a diverse group, I am not qualified. Yeah. And out of that same subtext is the idea that like, well, you've defined what you mean by diverse. You know what I'm saying? So you're saying that's everybody except, right? If you're not a white dude, you part of diversity. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like a straight white dude, then you part of diversity. So you saying no one is qualified.
Yeah. It's a fundamental
you know
misunderstanding of how it works.
Yeah.
Fundamentally not understanding how it works.
Yes. And then I'm saying if you were just a pure evil capitalist, just the worst version of a late stage capitalist, you would be like, I am going to fish in the largest ocean possible to find the best person. But instead, you saying, I am not going to find the best person possible is what you just said. That's what you're actually saying is by removing this, you're eliminating an entire pool of people that are probably better than you because you don't want a diverse hire. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
It just I'm like, I thought you liked money.
Just the fact that our science is going to be limited in any way is not good science. Our science should be open. And as Jeremy said earlier, sometimes you may not see the importance of one small study. Maybe they did a study on squid neurons 20 years ago, and you're like, why would you study squid neurons? Fast forward to 30 years down the road, people are using it for paraplegics in studies there. You did an expensive study on coffee stains. Someone could joke about that and laugh about that. But looking at that helps us with science somewhere down the road that you can't even imagine. It's anyways, and it's not like it's any random schmuck can just get a study funded by the NIH or do work with these things. It's a difficult process. You have to go through steps. You have to prove things to get there. It's absurd to think that they just get it because they're using these terms that are quote unquote woke.
Jeremy, I have a question actually based on that. Like, so obviously what we're discussing right now is the reasons that things are being scrubbed from the website, and it's not because it's junk science, it's because it's using words you don't like. Are there any instances that you can think of in your time as a professional where you were like, yeah, we should probably pull that down because that's actually bad science? You know what I'm saying?
Good question.
A great question. I think that an example of science changing and websites responding to that change is the degree to which COVID spreads through the air.
Word.
That is like, and by the way, this example is one of my favorites because it does actually show why content moderation is really, really tricky. Because I'll give this example because what's great about this example is it goes in the pendulum in all these different directions. So if in 2020 I went on Twitter and I said COVID is airborne, somebody would be a lot of really smart scientists would say that is false information, that is misinformation. Get that out of here. And so the content moderation that people actually think they want would have actually suppressed that information. And at the time, I really didn't know what to do with it because I thought we knew what we knew. And I was wearing a mask because I'm like, look, I don't know how airborne this thing is or isn't, but it's airborne enough. It's like it's going to get in my mouth or something. So I wasn't sure. And then the argument and the data came forward, and then we realized, it's much more spread through droplet and air than anyone ever realized. And so then we had scientists and public health organizations had to say, oh, we have to change this.
Actually,
yeah. So you go with it. So I think that's an example of both, like, everyone got really freaked out about content moderation a few weeks ago because Meta and all of them took away their fact checking. But I always use that example. It's not so easy because they would have absolutely censored COVID is airborne back in February of 2020. And just like they could have, by the way, if they said that, I don't know, norovirus is airborne, that's wrong. That's still wrong. So it's really, it's hard. But the answer here is we do it. We do change our minds. And I think that's a really important thing. And it drives me crazy when people won't admit it. When they'll stick to what they know, regardless of the data.
Well, guys, came back to like this concept of all this information in the CDC being censored. How are they going to do that? Are they just running some sort of program that's going to AI look through every paper? Or is it going to be one person? Because to my knowledge, there's only been one political appointee thus far to the CDC. Is this one person, the new acting director, is that the person now responsible for looking at every study that comes their way?
Yes.
That's mental.
The answer is yes.
How effective do you think that's going to be?
Well, it's slow.
Yeah.
Or clunky.
How many papers would you estimate? Just a rough estimate.
I really can't tell you that. I don't know. But it's a lot. And it's also these data sets, right? A lot of these data sets went down because if you had a data set that was saying how many people, here's the one, this is a real example. How many people have gotten their vaccine against RSV, a virus that is a seasonal respiratory virus? And the CDC tracks that. and they report it pretty much as close to real time as they can. That went away because I think they had women as one of the metrics.
Oh, man.
18 to 49 women, 50 to 64 women, 65 plus women, men. Oh no, that had to come down. And now it's back on. It's back live because now I think it says females, because that's sex versus gender. That is the level of creepy obsession they have. They're obsessed with something that nobody cares about. And so and literally one person at the top has to approve that. There might be some degree of devolving, meaning the top person saying, okay, for issues that are gender, sex, that one I just gave you, that can be done by people below me, and I'm going to sign off on that. But I have not heard that happening. Wow. So that's literally what it takes. And it's not, by the way, this is not conjecture. This is design. The Trump administration said anything that goes out of these agencies has to be approved by a political appointee. And that's a Trump administration person. That's one person.
It's just going to be such a terrible time. Such a terrible time the next coming years in terms of getting new information out and learning about anything new. It's going to be, really, I don't know if it's getting enough. I don't think it's getting enough attention. Last week there was a lot of confusion with all our friends in academic medicine, or anything resembling academic medicine, about the freeze, the spending freeze. Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little bit about why there was so much confusion, and has that cleared up at all?
Yes, the administration announced through a memo that all federal grants had to stop. Not judging new ones. That had to stop. We knew that, which is stupid enough.
Yeah.
But existing ones had to be frozen, so spending couldn't happen until they made sure that the terms that they don't like were not involved, DEI, whatever, transgender. And the issue there is that the scientists at these institutions, could be whatever, the University of Massachusetts, are funded by the NIH, and they don't want, when they get NIH funding, it's so audited. Everything is checked. You have to justify every dollar you spent. And that's how they make sure that there's no corruption and whatever. So if they spent money during that last week, people were worried that they would be accused of having violated a federal action, an executive order, and that their $1 million grant for 5 years to support 10 researchers, whatever it is, would be canceled tomorrow. So that meant that, for example, someone who just pays for like some software that they use for statistics and it's $5.99 a month and it's just on an auto pay, if that wasn't canceled, they violated the agreement.
Federal
so some
law.
People, so some people felt like panicked to that level, and they were literally trying to figure out, how do I make sure I don't like lose my grant on a technicality? Others were like, nah, they're not going to be that crazy. But I don't know how they knew, because there was no guidance. So then, fortunately, the American Public Health Association and a few other nonprofits sued. It got a stay. That got paused. Then the Trump administration said, "Okay, just kidding. That we're pulling that memo." Turned out that maybe they claimed it hadn't actually been their intention, which I'm like, okay, that's just incompetence. And
that's
so
terrifying. If that really was incompetent, on a massive level that affected
that's my
thousands.
You can't just be like, "Oh wait, I was just playing." Or wait, no, I ain't mean that. What I was trying to say was like, that,
you don't like
the
that?
list
Okay,
you
never
talking
mind.
about.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a CVS receipt. Like the list we're talking about of things that you shut down on some. I ain't mean to do that. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It was actually really even more bizarre than that, because they pulled the memo and they said, "Oh, sorry, that memo was not cleared. It came from the Office of Management and Budget. We didn't do that."
Blame it on an intern.
Yeah. I was like, somebody press, send. And then at the press conference where they announced that, they're like, "Oh, so that means that the freeze is over, right?"
So we're good.
And the press secretary said, "Oh no, the freeze is still on." They're like, "Wait, can you just tell us can you please just tell us what you want to be happening? Like, we don't have to agree with it. Like, we may hate it, but can you at least just do us the service of letting us know the oppression that you're trying to do?"
Yes.
Be effective at your fascism, please.
Am I gonna get paid on the 15th or not?
Yeah.
Well, right.
Can we what are you saying? Yeah.
Can I just say that what you just said is actually the most important thing? Because what's happening here, whether it's the NIH grant recipient at whatever, Rutgers University, or whether it's the CDC scientist who has to pull their paper because it says the word woman, not female. Everyone is complying because can I pay my rent?
Yeah.
Because they may be right, and some lawyer may sue for them, and they may retroactively be told, oh, you can't be fired, you get your job back. But in the meantime, the payroll stops, and you're going to miss rent, and you're going to be evicted. And so everyone is being forced to pick their battles so that they don't become homeless. And that is so, to me, just disgusting.
Yeah. Well, other than rescinding this memo, has there been any other bits of good news? You referred maybe to something with that PEPFAR. If you could also explain what PEPFAR is.
Yeah, PEPFAR is the president's emergency relief plan for HIV/AIDS that was announced by President George W. Bush when he was president. It was such an amazing amount of funding for the United States to commit to fighting HIV/AIDS globally by giving less wealthy nations inexpensive HIV drugs. It was so massive that I remember this. All these liberal progressive activists were like, "What? George Bush? No, this can't be real."
Yeah.
They were literally like, we didn't have the term back then, gaslit. And it turned out, no, he just believed that this was something that was important to do. And it saved 25 million lives so far. And so that was halted last week. That was the one that really just like turned the knife in a lot of our hearts. Because it's one thing to do something that's going to affect science down the road. This is like someone in South Africa going to their clinic on Monday to get their HIV med, and maybe there's someone whose immune system really got to the brink where they almost died a month ago, but now they got on meds. Yeah. They're just reconstituting their immune system. These meds are a bridge to their life. If they don't get their meds this week, they're going the other direction. They're dying. And so for that to have stopped, I mean, people lost in the United States public health, we lost our minds. So that apparently was reversed, and so supposedly the aid's coming out, but then we don't even know because a lot of the organizations that work on this rely on our funding, and that funding is frozen from other ways. So we're a little unclear on what's actually happening.
It's amazing. It is really amazing. In regards to, sometimes these presidents from the past that we had lower we had lower esteem for these. I still do. I'm not going to say that George W. Bush is by any means a good dude or a good president. That's not going to happen on this show, on any of our shows. But it is such an amazing contrast to see what we're seeing now, and to see the direct impact this sort of thing will have on patients. And it's funny because you can imagine someone, a Republican, arguing, well, why waste that money and not take care of the person here who needs medicine? And the answer is obviously, yes, you're almost there. Let's do that too.
Correct.
Well, no, there's also this idea of, it's kind of at this point, a term that's bastardized, but effective altruism, which is like doing the most with what you have. And so if you have $100 to spend to save a life, like what is the best way to spend that? Is it on yourself or is it on someone else? And it might be something like a mosquito net for malaria. It will save 20 lives, And so, but also for our own thing, again, like giving HIV meds to a country that wouldn't have them, even though it doesn't seem like it directly helps us, probably a 30-day supply of those HIV meds going to that place actually saves more American lives than directly giving it to the American person who didn't need it anyway. So in a way, you have to do like the second order effect.
Yeah. That's a funny story about PEPFAR. Well, maybe it's not funny, but just a little bit of color there. I got a chance to do some lobbying through the One campaign that gets a lot of his One campaign kind of started around this time that Bush was doing this thing. And the story goes, Bush was such a Bono fan. Bono gets hip to all this stuff. And then Bono invites just like Christian rock artists. So this dude named Michael W. Smith and this other group called the Newsboys. So they come and they sit down and they meet like just Christian rock. They just come and sit down and talk to him, and they convince him that this is the godly thing to do. And fast forward, 50% of AIDS in Africa has been eradicated. You know what I'm saying? Wow. Off of just bringing just a youth group banned.
Man,
You know what I'm saying?
that's
It's
wild.
it's so bonkers, right?
It's so wild, but there's nothing like that for Trump. Like, what does he care? Obviously, he doesn't care about religion.
Yeah.
He's not like,
Yeah.
I mean, George W. Bush might have actually believed in the stuff, but Trump clearly doesn't. Or that's
There are
crazy.
It's
people-
crazy, right? Yeah.
That story is a good example of how we change minds, and I'm really mindful of this in my work, but I don't always stick to it. I try, which is that if you want to change minds, dunking is not the way. The way is to reach across and try to make a connection. But there is clear data and experience showing that people trust people on their own side. And so what you want to do is talk to someone like that, you know. So Bono had found the Christian rockers so they could talk to Bush. Find someone you know who voted for Trump and say, hey, this is why this one matters, and try to make that difference, because they're not going to hear it from you, but they might hear it from your friend who is on their side, or who was, or who has connections. And that's actually, I think, what's happening with PEPFAR now is like the roller coaster we're on with PEPFAR has a lot to do with people who are sort of peripheral Trump world individuals who are trying to say, hey, look, to the extent that you haven't completely gone off the rails, this one really matters. And even Marco Rubio, who's the Secretary of State, he co-authored the bill to renew PEPFAR in 2018. He wrote a Fox News op-ed saying PEPFAR is one of our greatest achievements as a nation. So for him to sort of be in there, it tells you how small the circle is that they did this.
Yeah.
But I still think that their hearts and minds are in play a little, and we have to just try.
Well, that brings me to my last question for you, which is that you and I have both bumped heads online with some people who are going to be getting some pretty important positions within the NIH and the HHS, and you more so than me in your very diplomatic and, you know, fair and balanced way. I feel much more so than me. But these are now people who don't necessarily like all of us. They don't like me that much, some of them. They don't love you because you've been outspoken and you've been critical of some of their stances on vaccines and masking, etc. How are you going to work with these people? How are you feel you're going to approach this going forward? Because you do have a very vocal voice. People look to you. People they don't know already, they can watch you on like the news all the time or interviewing, you know, important people on your for your Substack and your channel. So how are you going to approach this going forward?
I have to be honest, this is something that's in flux. I had a plan, and in the words of the great Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan until someone punches you in the face. My plan had been, okay, I have a few connections in Trump world who respect me. We have a sort of an understanding that we don't agree, but we can work on things. And that if the Harris had won, I would have had a red phone that they would call me and say, hey, we want to flag this one thing, and would you help us with this? And sort of in exchange, if their side won, I got a red phone and say, hey, look. So there's a certain amount of clout. And my plan had been, all right, I'm going to go write a book about something else. I'm going to do my usual work. I'm going to keep my head down, but I'm going to work behind the scenes with people that I think are in play and choose wisely when I try to make the call and say, hey, maybe on this one, could we do something? That was plan A. Yeah. And then the last 2 weeks happened, and I had to speak out. So now I'm worried that those calls aren't going to be as easy to make. But I'm trying. Even now, I'm trying to do it in a way that doesn't bastardize, doesn't dunk on someone's intent, or doesn't say anything bad about individuals. And I'll give you just a very, Kaveh is kind of dancing around this. A very specific example is the guy who might run the NIH. Not too many people can say that the nominee to run NIH has written a hit piece on them in the Wall Street Journal. But I can say that. I can say that. He did that. He did that to me. And I responded by email to say, you might want to correct this. It's literally wrong. It's a fact check. Why don't you tell your editor? And he's like, okay, thanks. Just, this was a number he got wrong. I was like,
actually, it's 25%, bro.
Exactly. It was literally like, you got the number wrong, just in case you care. He's like, got it. But
it's a power move. That's a power move.
That's hard. I love that. I was like, that's a G move. I actually really like that.
Yeah.
So I responded. The Journal let me write a little thing saying why he was wrong, and And I've debated him on a podcast one time, and we butt heads, and I don't think there's a lot of love. But twice this past 2 weeks, I mentioned him in my newsletter, and I did it in ways that it's meant to highlight a disagreement, but not to say that this guy is evil or that he has nothing redeeming about him. And I'm not sure. He's got a pretty. I've heard rumors he's got a little bit of a thin skin, but maybe it's not true. Maybe he wants to work. Who knows? And so I'm trying my best, even while I'm calling this out more than I thought I would, being much more of a public voice in the past couple of weeks than I intended to, and putting my neck a little higher. I'm still hoping that even with doing that, there will be ways to do Plan A, which is to work behind the scenes to make some differences. But I don't know. We'll see.
I have a question about maybe him specifically. But I'm going to back into this question. Okay, I'm born and raised in California. We just saw the Grammys. The fact is, Kendrick is the superior rapper. It is what it is. But Drake is a cornball to me, but it's not like he can't rap. Like, he's a great rapper. He's just a cornball, and he's just not better than Kendrick. Mm-hmm. So my professional opinion, again, is, Drake's a great rapper, So my question is, if you can't see where I'm going here, is...
I cannot, and I'm okay.
I do, and I'm excited.
And I'm terrified because I don't have enough.
No, because you are clearly the expert in this scenario. In this scenario, you're the Kendrick. Like, you clearly know what you're talking about.
It's a compliment.
Yes. So my question is, when you look across the table at somebody like him, are you like, bro, what the hell are you talking about? Or is it like, no, he's smart. I think he's misinformed on certain things, but no, he's he knows what he's talking. It's fine. You know what I mean?
It's so complicated. It's a great question, because I do see some people who over the past number of years, they've gone increasingly from where I was at to much more in the extreme category. And watching that's very depressing and sad. Yeah. But then there are people who you just disagree on certain issues. Yeah. I'll give you an example for him. Like, I know he has intelligent neurons in his brain. I know that. In fact, he wrote a paper in 2012 that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which is like one of our top journals, that measured the mortality effect of PEPFAR.
Wow.
And there's two things that blew me away about this. Number one, of course, it showed the incredible early effects that PEPFAR was already having in 2012. So, and it was a very, very well done study. It was very rigorously done. And the second thing that was so interesting to me about that was it used a lot of the same statistical techniques that a lot of COVID researchers did to show that mitigation worked. But when it came to that, he didn't agree. So I thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, it's interesting. He used difference in difference techniques, which is a statistical technique, to look at PEPFAR and a slam dunk, just the way people use that technique to look at some COVID outcomes. But when it came to that, he wasn't on board because he felt that we overdid it with our COVID response. Yeah. And so I look at that, and I'm just really kind of just puzzled by it, because I know that he's a smart guy who can do great work, but I also know that, like everything in the world, your priors, your bias you bring into something just changes how you process knowledge. So I sit if I'm ever across the table from him, I'm going to take it on an issue by issue basis. Literally, I'm just going to be okay. How do we? Are the neurons doing their thing or not? Are they firing or are they misfiring?
Yeah,
you totally answered the question. That's exactly what I was asking. Thank you.
Yeah, you're looking for internal consistency. And speaking of consistency, you know what's consistently great? Your Substack. Let's plug it right now so people can find you there.
Thank you so much. My Substack is called Inside Medicine, insidemedicine.substack.com. It used to come out twice a week for free during the week, and then a paywall about my life as an ER doctor on the weekends. Currently, it's coming out more than once a day because I can't stop. That's not sustainable, but I'll do it until I collapse. And other places, Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram. Actually, Instagram, my full name. My mom's very happy. Jeremy Samuel Faust.
Yeah.
Aww.
He's a sweet boy, that Jeremy Samuel Faust.
Yeah.
It is a great Substack. I do read it. It is where I get a lot of my up-to-date information, keeps me going on this show, and it helps me. It's a real source of information for me. So it's really well written. It's not so long that it's not manageable. You can read it in like one easy sitting. You get a lot of information. It's very high impact, and it's well written. So I highly recommend it. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Prop.
Yeah.
There's so much that you do and you do very well at a very high level. I'm not sure what to plug, but let's start with the show, Hood Politics. For those who are listening to Hood Politics right now and are listening to the House of Pod, where can people find Hood Politics? And can you tell us again a little bit about that show, which again, I love?
Yeah. So Hood Politics with Prop is on all the pods. It's on the video version's on my YouTube, which is just Prop Hip Hop. And yeah, the idea is that like, the cornerstone premise is like, if you've grown up in an urban area, you understand politics more than you think you do. And that it's just more of a language thing. So what I'm trying to do on the show is use what you already know to help show you that the stuff you think you don't know, you actually know better than you think you do. So we cover, from filibustering all the way to what's happening with the CDC. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just try to like explain it in a way that's like not so much analysis and commentary, but more like translation. Like, this what that means. They saying this about this. And you would probably feel the way I feel about that because you grew up like I grew up, So that's kind of the idea. I also do music and poetry. All that's on prophiphop.com. And probably shutting down the coffee thing because I'm out of money. I love coffee, but running a business turns out I don't know if you know, but that's hard.
I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard things.
Yeah. Starting a business is hard and clearly not my skill set.
Well, I mean, listen, you can't be amazing at everything. It's just not fair. Okay? It's all right. So take a hit on this one. Take an L for once, okay?
I'll take that L.
Okay. Yeah. Because honestly, you are an amazing. I use teacher in your introduction specifically.
Yeah, true.
And if you look your page up on Wikipedia, it doesn't have that, I don't think. But like, to me, that is such an important part of what you do, how you make things relatable. Jeremy's never been related to Kendrick Lamar before, but
actually, that's not true. Can I just say that is not true?
Bullshit.
Let's go.
Bullshit.
That is not true. So I actually wrote a Slate article when he won the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
About the Pulitzer, because the Pulitzer Prize is a very classical music kind of thing usually.
Yeah.
And I'm in that world, and actually had been involved with a Pulitzer Prize winning piece from a year or two before that. And so and I actually had the privilege of informing somebody that they won the Pulitzer Prize for music. And
That's
so
dope.
when it was such a great moment, and so when Kendrick won it, I went and listened to that album a handful of times, and I was like, I get why this won. Let me write about, from a classical perspective, why I think the Pulitzer Committee kind of did its job here.
Well, it proves my point even more. He nailed that, and Jason nailed that. Like, just not even knowing that, just meeting you for this short period of time. Anyway,
when he got to the whole Drake thing, I was like, I know there's beef, I know there's tracks, but I'm out of my element. So
there's other podcasts for that. But again, Hood Politics, amazing. The music also very good, underrated, really, in my opinion. It's fantastic stuff, and I really enjoy it. If you haven't already rate and review this show, The House of Pod, you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts. Thanks again to Lucky Dog Hot Sauce. And thank you both so much. This was super helpful, and I learned a ton. All right. Bye.
All right,
bye. Bye. All right.
All right, now don't you hit stop on this pod. You better listen to these credits. I need you to finish this thing so I can get the download numbers, okay? So don't stop it yet. But listen, this was recorded in East Los Boyle Heights by your boy Propaganda. Tap in with me at prophiphop.com. If you're into cold brew coffee, we got Terraform Cold Brew. You can go there.com and use promo code HOOD, get 20% off, get yourself some coffee. This was mixed, edited, and mastered by your boy Matt Osowski, killing the beat softly. Check out his website, mattosowski.com. I'm going to spell it for you because I know. MattOsowski.com, mattosowski.com. He got more music and stuff like that on there, so go and check out the heat. Hood Politics is a member of Cool Zone Media, executive produced by Sophie Lichterman, part of the iHeartMedia Podcast Network. Your theme music and scoring is also by the one and only Matt Osowski, still killing the beat softly. So listen, don't let nobody lie to you. If you understand urban living, you understand politics. These people is not smarter than you. We'll see y'all next week.